You're listening to the Tom Talks Baseball podcast on 710 AM and 97.5 FM KGNC. Podcasts are recorded during the week, and some information you may hear may be slightly outdated. Listen to this and other episodes as they happen anytime at KGNCNewsNow.com under the podcast section. Here are your hosts, Tom Young and David Lovejoy.
Welcome back. Another edition of the Tom Talks Baseball podcast on KGNCNewsNow.com and 1009theeagle.com. Thanks for finding us again today. You can find us on Facebook, Tom Talks Baseball Podcast, Twitter and Instagram at Tom Talks BBP. I'm Tom Young, and I think this might be, outside of a couple of phone interviews, the very first show that I have done where David Lovejoy is not here. David Lovejoy is out today. Everything's fine. Family matter. Taking care of that. But he's out today, and I had to find two great people to replace him. That's how David is. I needed to find two great guys, and we were able to do that. First of all, a guy we've had on a few times before, Hall of Famer, Sports Drive host, Lance Lahnert. Welcome back. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great today. What about you, Tom?
Doing very well. And we had this guy on about maybe a month ago. Glad to get him back on. Glad the truck is working.
Me too.
Yeah, Austin Hartsfield of the East Village Times does a lot of stuff for the Sod Poodles. You can find him on Twitter at Hartsfield MLB. Also, because of all the Sod Poodle stuff, we're going to be doing a little bit of that, talk about that today. But Austin, how you doing, man?
I'm excited to be here. I'm just thrilled that my truck's working.
Well,
so there's
that. Yeah. Well, we were talking again because I was out at Bacher Strong Night on Saturday and showed off the bracelet, and you were like, "Man, I can't make it. My truck broke down." So I got you a bracelet, and you're wearing that right now. So there you go. And it's like, well, I guess you got to come in, pick it up, and we'll talk baseball and record it. So that's what brings you in.
It's like a secret club. If you can talk baseball, I can talk about just about anything.
Yep, and you also have a podcast of your own. Tell us about that.
So that's Painting Corners podcast. We did that because my big thing about reporting is I'm so done with just like this guy's hitting well. You know, I want to ask if somebody gives me 10 minutes of their time, I'm going to put in the research. I'm going to do everything that I can in order to get information that I wouldn't get otherwise. So whenever we interview players, we dive deep, you know, so it's a lot of player interviews, a lot of just talking about the game of baseball today, how it's evolving, and kind of how we should probably be evolving with it.
Gotcha. So where can we find that if we want to check that out?
Pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts.
Okay. All right. So, Austin, glad you can join us. Lance, glad you can join us. And we're going to talk some Sod Poodles here. They had a great 25-game stretch, gave themselves first place, and they've been kind of struggling a bit of late, but they still got, at this point, a 3-game lead there in the South. And you've had a chance to see just about every home game. The truck kept you away from a couple of them, it sounds like.
Truck permitting.
Yeah. But I know one guy you really want to talk about is Luis Patino, and he's had a couple of starts, one here in Hodgetown, but just you've had a chance to chat with him, see him throw a little bit. Just what are your thoughts on him so far?
The first thing that comes to my mind is genuine. And, you know, when you get a guy like that where you have Jose Fernandez comps because of his stuff, because of his electricity, it's hard to find people like that. It's hard to find people that are that nice with that kind of drive, with that kind of stuff. So a guy like Patino, who's not afraid to throw his changeup against anybody, that's the pitch, though. If he can get that changeup down and he can get that going and that curve gets back to where it was when they signed him initially as a position player, then, I mean, he's going to be dominant. The Jose Fernandez comps could be like really, really real.
And I guess there was a bit of a scare in his last start. He left in the third inning, and Padres Twitter was flipping out. But I
was flipping out.
Yeah, but it was just a blister, I think, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, of course, you don't want blisters, but it could have been a whole lot worse. Another guy, one of your favorite guys, Mackenzie Gore, shut down for the year. What's he doing now? Like, when you're shut down for the year, like, what do you do?
He's here. I can't really answer that question because I don't know the answer to that one fully, but I can tell you that he's here, and he's always in good spirits. So
in the original release, they kind of stated that they could pull him back for the playoffs, maybe for a couple innings. Do you see that?
I don't see why not, because I don't see anything wrong with his health. Obviously, I haven't seen him throw since when it happened initially, but I don't see why they couldn't. I think it would be great for him. They did the same thing with Owen Miller last year, besides the shutdown part of it. But when you have a guy that's at 150% of the innings that he was at last year because of the blister problem, ironically, that Patino has a blister now, then you have to be careful with those guys. Another guy with comps. Clayton Kershaw is the comp that everybody gives me, and he's just spectacular as we know.
Well, we know the season's just about wrapping up. They got a few more games on the road before the final homestand. Do you think Patino will get shut down because of the blister, or do you think he's still going to keep going every 5th or 6th day?
From what I've heard, it's not even that bad.
Okay.
It was just precautionary, but yeah, no, I think he'll be good to go. I think he'll pitch the rest of the season.
Did you suggest the airplane glue trick?
I didn't.
Okay. I didn't. Back in the day, that's what they supposedly did.
They put this
the little airplanes you put together as kids.
I was a bowler, so we had like new skin.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah. Curious, though, do you think the guys who want to develop a changeup, do you think when Trevor Hoffman was here
you have to.
That they tapped into him?
You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I
totally agree.
I really wish that Patino was here whenever Hoffman was here, just so you can kind of grab that guy for a second. Whenever you have guys like this, and we talked about this before we came on air, we're very fortunate to have the amount of celebrity that we've had here this year, whether it be, surprisingly, Nolan Ryan, apparently.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was in the Toot and Totem booth signing autographs for just... the upper level guys, but
it's top secret news.
Yeah.
That's kind of how
he
you
snuck into town.
But how about that? You walk into Hodgetown and you say, "What? Wait, is that Nolan Ryan?"
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah.
That
happened. I think it was. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Jerks and Profar. It might have been Profar who it was. Where somebody walked past me and I was like, I know him.
Yeah.
Because I think he was here to watch Jeremy play.
Yeah, cool.
Oh,
Frisco.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those moments where you're like...
You're never used to that, is it? Just real quick story. When Emmitt Smith was here, he was hungry on the way out to the airport, drops by the Whataburger off I-40 by the Walmart. So imagine that. You're like sitting there, and he's actually sitting down eating because they had a couple hours to kill. And wait, is that Emmitt Smith really at Whataburger in Amarillo? You know what I mean? But anyway... Just like Nolan Ryan, you know what I mean? Now, he did hide out, well, not hide out, but I mean, stayed in the booth quite a bit.
Hoffman was good, though. Hoffman was like really open.
Were you surprised by that?
I honestly was, because, I mean, when I think closer, I think guys that just come in, shut games down, very little personality. Like Mo. I mean, Mo obviously is the biggest example, but I mean, I wasn't expecting him to be the personality that he was.
Lee Passmore and I had a chance to talk to him a little bit extra after the original interview in the dugout alone, and we were grilling him on his walk-in music, how that happened, and it happened as a fluke. The story goes is he was sitting in there and they said, "Man, I think it was Finley." Finley was traded to the Padres for a little while and said, "Look, we have a guy who they came with this music, crowd went nuts." Hoffman goes, "So the PR department decides the music. Hoffman didn't." And so he comes into Hell's Bells for the rest of it.
There you go.
Yeah. I will say this, though. He just said, I think I need just talking. He goes, this has been a lot of fun. I think I probably need to do a little more of this. He was impressed by the players asking him questions, the media, as well. So just to back up what you were saying, Hoffman was unreal, but I think he was surprised his impact he had in this little short day.
I think he's one of those guys that doesn't know how much impact that he had on the game of baseball. I mean, that might be the best changeup of all time. It very well could be. I mean, unless we're going to go, Maddox, Glavinish,
Well, you take away Rivera.
Yeah,
I mean, Hoffman. We're probably talking about him
and
a lot more.
It's really not close.
Well, yeah, and if he wasn't on the Padres, maybe if he was on a bigger market team like Rivera was, getting it done in the postseason. But Hoffman, just as good as anybody. And
where do you go after Mo Hoffman? Do you go Lee Smith? Do you go K-Rod? Do you go Eckersley? Guys like that. I mean,
Goose
there's a huge
was pretty nasty.
drop off between those two.
Yeah, now they had to win. They had to pitch those 3 innings, though. You know what I mean, to get that one save back in the day. So that really skews that stat quite a bit in their primes, like the Gossages, like Eck for a while there.
It's the only position that's ever created a stat.
Well, the hold, too.
The hold. Yeah, we created that one because of the use of bullpen pitchers.
Do you like the hold stat? Do you think it's overrated, underrated? Is it useless?
I like it for fantasy baseball.
No. Because it's a fantasy baseball created stat.
Because it gives other pitchers that before really had no value, now they have some sort of value. So if I'm in a bigger league, and I've run out of closers.
But the old school guys are thinking this, Tom. It's just like everybody deserves a ribbon now or a trophy when you're a little kid. Not there's in my day they picked an MVP, an outstanding player, and they picked the sportsmanship. That was it. You know what I mean? And you had your Dairy Queen, the ice cream, which was better than the trophy. But I think the hold, I mean, not disrespect stats, I think the hold is simply that, to give those guys a little something to grab on, like, hey, I am important to this team. But I think it's an overrated stat.
It's not. I wouldn't say it's not insignificant, but it's definitely very, very minor. When we have stats like swing strike rate, we have deep stats instead of just like, hey, you came in and, didn't give up the lead.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a stat like that, but at the same time, if you have guys that can't get those holds, you got to really, this day and age, you need, 3 or 4 guys on top of the starter to finish out the ball game. Yeah, you got to get to a Hoffman.
I agree. Yeah. You need 8 outs, 9 outs, in that back end.
So I know a question, Lance, you wanted to ask Austin about players moving up in September. Go ahead.
Yeah, Austin, and I want your opinion as well, and then I want to throw mine in. A few guys have been here for a while, a little bit established in Amarillo, even though it's been a year. Everyday players, because the pitchers, we have learned, that's the one thing we've learned about Double-A baseball, where they really do jump those guys around. I love how the Padres give these guys a little bit of a snippet in the big leagues, and then they'll place them where they want them. I love that about them. But everyday players like the Huddy Potts, the Owen Millers, the Buddy Reeds, of the everyday players who have kind of been here for the season, who do you think's going to be the one who makes it to the big leagues?
I don't even think it's... And if you're asking me firmly who I believe is going to be the best big leaguer of the position players on the roster, he hasn't been here all year. It's Taylor Trammell. Like, he's got immaculate plate vision. If you go back and if you watch any Taylor Trammell at bat, right, watch where he sees the zone. His vision is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Obviously, the hitting's not there yet, but everybody that projects him to be, at worst, a power-hitting corner outfielder. When you have vision like that, you get good pitches, and you're going to eventually get good pitches, and he's going to be able to do that, and he's going to be very good and very big part of this rebuild.
I know. And he has the defensive skills as well.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And the speed,
The speed is...
Plus, obviously a highly rated prospect. Incredible the Padres were able to get him in that 3-team deal. And I can see why people think that, because just looking at his stats, I haven't seen this guy really play a whole lot this year.
He hadn't lit it up here.
But the one thing that stuck out was the walk rate. It's like, my goodness, for a guy that's not a big power guy right now or anything like that, he's able to find ways to get on base without getting hits, and that's something nowadays. If you can do that, you can almost find a spot on a big league team.
OBP is everything right now. On base percentage is everything. If you can get on base in this game, you're going to find a spot.
What do you think about Owen Miller? Because I'm a huge Owen Miller fan. I hate to say it from a Padre standpoint. Where are you going to go? Because you got so much great talent on that infield.
It's like that for everybody. Torrens is another one.
Do you think Miller is a guy that can develop a little more power? Because I think he's a kind of player that would have been really good in like the 90s.
Do you remember?
Because he's not. He's a great average hitter, not a big power guy right now. Maybe playing second base, he can hit second or sixth or seventh or something in the lineup. Do you think his game would fit with today's baseball, where you got guys that have to hit at least 20 or 25? It seems like to be on a lineup. I love that question
so much. I really love that question. And it's funny that you're wearing a Cubs shirt, because the name that I'm about to bring up is a former Cub. He reminds me a lot of a young DJ LeMahieu.
Don't say that name.
I know. It reminds me a lot of a young DJ LeMahieu. If you can hit in this league, you're going to find a spot on a roster, just like we were talking about with OBP. And he's got one of the lowest swinging... what is it? He's got one of the lowest strikeout rates in the entire system. I think it's around like 8%.
Pretty good.
So not only is he making contact, but he's not swinging and missing. And I really, really like Owen. He's getting so much smoother at the shortstop position, which is even better. I think he's more suited as a second baseman, which obviously no shortstop wants to hear. Yeah. But it just suits his skill set more. He's not a bigger body guy, but he's built a whole lot more than I think people think. And that's kind of the projection for him. I think that there's a little more room for power, but I think Hodgetown bloats a lot of those numbers.
Do you think he finds a spot on the Padres, though?
No way. No. It's Urias, Tatis, Machado. Where are you going to go? Hosmer, Gold Glover at first base, who's starting to put it together with the bat. It's same thing with Torrens. Where are you going to put Luis Torrens? What if Luis Campusano is everything that everybody says he is? And I mean, we can even go Austin Allen. What if Austin Allen's everything that everybody says he is? There's just too many catchers, too many players in the system. It's spoil of riches.
I mean,
but you can't find a place if you talk to those guys. They actually believe that if you play and produce,
everybody needs a Brock Holt.
Yeah, you'll eventually get a place in the big leagues or a chance. One thing that Miller brings is such he's so serious. I like that about him, actually. When he's in the game, stone cold in interviews, and and then you see him with his is it his wife or is it? Yeah, it's his wife afterward, and he's like a whole different cat. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun. But I will say this: I totally respect how he also plays the defensive end of the game, where he really respects that position. He wants to be good at it. He's so consistent. He didn't make this play, but he was playing second base one night. There's a looper down the line, and so he's running after it, running hard. Then all of a sudden you see him just dive for it, and just missed it. Like, what an all-out effort! And they were getting spanked at that time. If you remember, I think it was 11-3. So I said, there's a baseball player that I would want in my clubhouse.
I look at. I'm very big, and I'm almost exactly what you just said. I'm very big into, if you're still giving me effort when you're down 11-0, that tells me that you actually enjoy what you're doing. And I really appreciate that from a baseball player, because not everybody's like that. A lot of people are just trying to get through the game, just trying to, but in order to be as good as you are and to be as good as Owen is, you have to have a mindset like that. Luis Torrens is another guy, very, very great at his job, right? Doesn't really have a spot here, but I mean, when you produce numbers like he has, to where, I mean, let's forget the bat.
Yes.
I'll say, behind the plate.
Unbelievable to watch.
He's the best game caller I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, not just that, he's been throwing people out left and right.
He's like 51% or something like that.
And then he's so good at blocking it when he has to,
So he's one of those guys, even if he can't hit, he finds himself as a backup catcher somewhere because of the way he handles the staff and can control the base running game.
But they're so much more comfortable when he's when he's behind there. You know what I mean? No disrespect to any other catchers. They're so confident in how the game's gonna roll. Got to ask you. Let's bring up Buddy Reed. Here's one of the great athletes we've ever. I mean, in the organization. I don't care. I mean, he's not Tatis, but he's up there, man. Yeah. But I don't see the intensity, the effort I want every day out of him.
I think that's just Buddy. Honestly, if we're just thinking about it, Buddy's just kind of seems like he's always laid back. He's very good in interviews. I do like that. He will tell you exactly what you want to know. It's just another spot to where there's so many people, and the bat hasn't been there yet, which is very surprising in a place like this, to where everybody's numbers are good. So you wonder if maybe it's a swing issue, maybe it's mental, because there's always that. I don't think we take into account how big a mental problem is. I mean, we just got a guy, Javi Guerra, who used to be a shortstop before he was a pitcher, and from what I've heard, he had some trouble with just adjusting to everyday life, and that's going to be probably what the next big piece is on. But I mean,
and you've mentioned Tom, his roommates tearing it up in the big leagues.
Yeah. Oh my goodness!
Does that weigh on him a little bit?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because he was probably rated, right along with each other. Let's face it. I mean, they're boys. So, I love Buddy Reed, but I'm just saying, I just want to see I want to see consistency.
Definitely see what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I got it, but that cannon.
Oh, that cannon's so fun. It is fun, though, because
just hit 270.
Yeah, just hit 270. Yeah, I love that, because it's respected in the league now. You guys see, usually you see guys at third fake it at least.
Be Laureano in Oakland. Be somebody like that. You don't have to hit 300.
Because he tore it up at Lake Elsinore last year, struggled in Double-A last year and a little bit this year. But like you said, plus speed, plus fielder, plus arm. Do you think maybe like a September call-up just to be an outfield
replacement? Yeah, like Terrence Gore type.
8th or 9th inning, for even maybe this year for the Padres, just to get someone out there that can field it. Do you think something like that is in his future?
It's just too many guys.
Too many guys?
Yeah. I'm going to say this over and over again. Yeah. Edward Olivares is on the 40-man roster. And he's a guy that probably, of everybody, deserves the call up right now.
Yeah.
Just consistently, he never does anything over the top.
I will say this is just there's no facts behind it or anything.
Right.
But if Buddy Reed ever has a chance to play in a major league game, I think he's that kind of guy who nothing's too big for him.
Oh,
you know what I mean? He'll be
he's in the Bronx.
Yeah. He's a stud. He'll be a stud out there. He's almost. And I'm not saying he's bored at the Double-A level, but I would like to see what just Tom said. Let's put him up there for a week and just see what happens.
You know what I want to see?
You know what I mean?
I want to see him get up there.
You're right.
In the water.
They are so deep.
I want to see him get up there and like in his major league debut, and someone hits a ball in the gap and he fields it on the warning track, and someone's trying to go home and see if that adrenaline with his arm will.
It's like the night that he threw it into the stand for the warning track, and I was just like, how?
It's like. Terrible throw, but wow.
That was literally almost the tweet. It was like, that was not on the money, but I think, it went far.
I think early in the year, he might have been in right field that night, but I saw him throw a guy out, tagging up from second. The guy, because you see him coming back towards the press box, and I have some really nice binoculars, and I mean, he was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's never happened to me before.
He's a guy that doesn't see a lot of pitches either, and a lot of his early power, everybody was excited. He became a quick favorite. He's only homered once this year while ahead in the count.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, no, he was only homered once this year while behind in the count.
Okay.
That's what it is. It's something
so
like
you get ahead of him, and then
once you get ahead, and I think it's 8 of the 9 at one point were ambushes to where they were the first strike that he saw. He just took deep, so he doesn't get into very deep counts.
Is it because they're pitching around him, or because he's patient, or just a little of both? Or
I think it's that's actually something I want to talk to him about, because I want to know what his mental approach is, because I've talked to Taylor Trammell about it a lot. I don't know if you talked to him about his plate discipline.
I haven't talked to him about that. I've been in 2 interviews with him that I've been very impressed with him.
Ask him about his approach at the plate, and how he sees pitches, because he gave me an amazing quote. He said, "I can tell how good I feel that day by the way I take pitches." And guys like Zuniga and Reed haven't took pitches enough to get into good counts. I think if Zuniga ever takes pitches, I think he'll be phenomenal.
He's a DH.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've not been impressed with my boy Zuniga's first base skills. But
just talking with Trammell real quick, the thing I loved about him was, I'm sure a lot of guys are this way, but, and like the team first, I'm up there, he could be I can hit the home runs and be the big 40 home run guy, or I can get on base and let the guy behind me get it done. And he's about doing what's best for the team. So if it means walking, he'll get on base. If it means trying to get a base going the other way, he seems to adapt, or that's the way he came across to me. He will adapt to whatever the situation is to help out the team, not so much help out himself.
Speaking of the mental game, I had a chance to talk with Bacher a little bit, with he did all those interviews. Yeah, what a classy guy. And I really believe the situation, and then talking to Wellman as well about it, he really brought up a point where, they kind of left him alone in San Antonio last year a little bit, dealing with the cancer of his father. Mm-hmm. But he said his mental approach now has changed completely from last year to this year, when he's around, when he's taking the mound, when he's preparing, when he's in the locker room. So your point being that you brought up earlier, that sometimes we don't give these guys credit for being human beings, and the mental game is just as important as their physical stats. We see these, like a Buddy Reed, maybe he's going through something, mentally.
Yeah, we never know.
Yeah, we don't know. So I'm just saying, that with Bacher, I learned a lot with what he said. And I said, what about the stats last year? And he goes, yeah. He just kind of shook his head, and he said, "Man, that was tough." You know what I mean? And his dad literally sat down with him and said, "Hey, man, we're going through this together, but you got to live your dream. Just don't do the best you can not to worry about it." So he said, instead of like calling every night or just worrying about everything, they talk 2 or 3, maybe every second or third day, which I found that refreshing, that he was that open about his personal life, first of all, and then to learn that we need to give these guys a break, that they're not just baseball players, that they're going through things.
If you don't know me, like, personally, I wait tables at Chili's when I'm not doing the baseball thing. One of the first games that I ever covered, Michelle Baez, no, it wasn't that was later, but you see these guys after the game walk out onto the streets to go home, and for that very second, you forget that they're baseball players. You're like, he's going home just like I am right now. He just got off of work, technically, and he's going home. The second you realize that is the second that you can become better. I think that you can become better at this. Another thing, Owen Miller came into my Chili's the other night, and I was just like, I forget that they have to eat.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
man.
you think they live a different life, or in a different place. Even though we're all in Amarillo, they're somewhere else in Amarillo that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
But it's not true.
Lake Bacher, by the way, could be the second half MVP outside of that nine earned run.
Yeah, that was kind of
an outing.
But
tough situation being put in as a reliever too. When you're, don't you agree?
Oh yeah,
no,
100%.
No.
But you take that away. He had like a run of he was 15 to 20 appearances where his ERA was below 2. I was going to ask, how has his stock improved this year? Because he struggled early, went to Lake Elsinore for just a bit, came back, and almost ever since then he's been magnificent.
He's kind of mirroring Kyle Lloyd to an extent, because him and Kyle Lloyd have been really good, and they both.
Yeah.
Funny, the weird thing is they get tattooed back-to-back nights. Kyle Lloyd gets tattooed because he gives up six consecutive 2-out singles, but I mean Bacher's status has obviously gone up, but it goes back to the phrase, there's just too many guys.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited for Lake, the way that he's progressing, and just how just he's improving every single day, and you don't see that from everybody. I'm not going to name names, but not everybody gets better every single day, every single time that you see them.
I want to thank Lance Lahnert again for joining us on the podcast. Of course, Lance, Panhandle Sports Hall of Famer, host of the Sports Drive. You can hear right here on KGNC-AM 5 to 7 on weekdays. Mondays, I believe, in the foreseeable future, we're going to be at House Divided with that show. So stop by House Divided, hang out with Lance and the gang. Also, a big thanks to Austin Hartsfield. You can find him on Twitter at Hartsfield MLB. Does a lot of great work for East Village Times covering the Amarillo Sod Poodles. You can hear this full episode by liking us on Facebook, Tom Talks Baseball Podcast. Also following us on Twitter at Tom Talks BBP. You can also find it at KGNCNewsNow.com and 1009theeagle.com. We got into some MLB talk near the end of this week's episode. And also, we got our Texas Ranger Bobblehead Giveaway underway. A lot of people qualifying by liking us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we had our first winner. Congratulations to Tony Woodby. Tony Woodby, you hear your name, reach out to us. We'll get you hooked up with one of those Texas Ranger Top Moments at Globe Life Park bobbleheads. Definitely like us on social media, because more chances to qualify for more bobbleheads will be coming up this week. Thanks again for listening to the podcast this week on KGNC 710 AM and 97.5 FM. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for checking out this week's Tom Talks Baseball Podcast on KGNC. To join the conversation and hear all episodes of the podcast as they happen, go to KGNCNewsNow.com and search under the podcast section. Like the Tom Talks Baseball Podcast on Facebook and follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Tom Talks BBP. Thanks for listening, and we'll check in next week on the Tom Talks Baseball Podcast.